Hey guys and girls, it's me, Rocket, and yes, it is indeed me. I just got back from infiltrating my arch enemy's base with my good old friend Linat here. Mostly because I wanted to take his mask because it's the closest I'll ever get to cosplaying as Spider-Man, so yeah. That was a great sleep. Wait. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, also known as the Amazing Spider-Man. But it's definitely not the most favorite Spider-Man amongst a lot of people. It's going to be like at the bottom of the list when it comes to the favorite movie version of Spider-Man. But there is still a lot of people who kind of really love this version of Spider-Man for a lot of different things, and I thought it'd be best to cover it on the channel because I do have fond memories of this version of Spider-Man myself, since it's technically the first ever Spider-Man I saw at the movies. I even had this KFC bucket that's themed to the first Amazing Spider-Man film, and I still have it, and now it's carrying... How did that get in there? So with the recent release of Venom 2 in the theaters, oh yeah. Yeah, whatever. I thought it'd be a good time as ever to take a look at the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 in one single video and talk about how great Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is, and of course some of its flaws. So without further ado, let's get into it.
3, 2, 1.
Ready for liftoff, super dang rocket. Get ready for it. So the first Amazing Spider-Man film was released in 2012, the same year Avengers was released and of course made Marvel Studios a big name. But of course this movie was in development before, Marvel Studios became a big name in the first place and established how bright and colorful superhero movies can still be. So all the rage when it comes to superheroes was... everything was a lot more darker, a lot more grounded in reality, or should I say, more realistic. And of course, everything was a lot more serious. But not too serious though. They still need to sell some toys. So yeah, that's basically how things were back in the day, and you can clearly tell that with this little suit here, which I actually really like because it kind of shows that, this was made by a person who doesn't have enough resources, he isn't a billionaire or whatever, and is just using whatever he can find in the basement and stuff like that and just stitching his own superhero suit together. It's basically a homemade Spider-Man suit, and I really like it for that. Yeah, sure, it isn't the most appealing suit in the world, especially when it comes to seeing it in the daytime. It doesn't really look that nice. But when it comes to nighttime though, it looks pretty cool. Kind of feels like a Batman version of Spider-Man, which is honestly a pretty cool concept as its own. One thing a lot of people like to comment about when it comes to Andrew Garfield's version of Spider-Man is his personality. Mostly when it comes to just him being Peter Parker, because of course it seems like he's not really like Peter Parker of the past, isn't that nerdy and whatever. And he kind of feels a lot more cooler and hip with the kids, which is something that is supposed to happen after he becomes Spider-Man. So yeah, you can clearly tell with the stuff like, yeah, skateboard, hip with the kids. Yeah, but in honesty, it does still feel like Peter Parker, especially when it comes to with the arc witness. You can clearly tell when he first talks to Gwen Stacy for the first time, and yeah, he kind of struggles to say something to her. So yeah, he still has that kind of awkwardness that the original Peter Parker has. So I think it's a pretty alright representation of Peter Parker in my opinion. It is not, completely jarring. Oh yeah, speaking of Gwen Stacy, I really like the relationship between Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy in both films. I really like their interactions whenever they're both on screen together. It's always so fun to watch, and it's a big improvement compared to, the Tobey Maguire version with Mary Jane. So yeah, at least this movie has something that a lot of people at least can agree is much more better than the original Spider-Man. I know a lot of people love to compare Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and probably after, Tom Holland's Spider-Man trilogy is finished, we'll probably have that being compared too. But the interesting thing about the Amazing Spider-Man and the first Spider-Man is that, in a way, they're kind of similar. It's just that they kind of do things differently. While the original Spider-Man kind of has a lot more of a light-hearted tone, here they do try to make it more serious and grounded to reality, which of course was the norm back in the day. And to be honest, it is an interesting idea, and I think they pulled it off pretty well. You can clearly tell they were trying their best to make this movie a lot more modern and a lot more cinematic. Of course, you can clearly tell this with them not trying to say, with great power comes great responsibility, and trying to make it a lot more realistic at how you could say it in an actual conversation, I guess you can say. I mean, it was definitely an okay effort, but still. But there are some great scenes when it comes to this idea. Like, you know, of course, a lot of people like to bring out the, you know, the crane scene where all the cranes are lined up to help Spider-Man get to Oscorp Tower. A perfect way of showing that, you know, the city needs Spider-Man and Spider-Man needs the city. Although there is one big thing that the original Spider-Man has over the Amazing Spider-Man, and that is the villains. The villains in The Amazing Spider-Man aren't that memorable and don't have that much going on. I mean, the Lizard was alright, but there's not much going on compared to stuff like Doc Octopus and of course, you know, even Green Goblin. And yeah, it's a bit unfortunate, especially since, you know, the second movie has a bunch of villains and we don't really have much going on with each of them, sadly. So yeah, here's your unfortunate segue into Amazing Spider-Man 2. I know a lot of people like to bash this movie on the internet, and to be honest, it is deserved in a way because it is technically one of the weakest of the Spider-Man movies we have so far. But you can clearly tell they were trying to make some sort of effort to make this a pretty good movie. But at last, it didn't really work at the end because you still have a bit convoluted story with a bunch of different plot lines that don't really mesh well together. And yeah, you know the drill at this point. You've seen it in a lot of other movies that were trying to make some sort of cinematic universe, which we'll get into later, so yeah. But of course, let's talk about what they were trying to do that did kind of work in a way. For starters, I really like all the moments where it's just Spider-Man being Spider-Man. Of course, you got all the quips that Andrew Garfield is pulling out. Out of all the actors we have so far for Spider-Man in live action, he's the one who could definitely do quips the best. And I really like some of the heartwarming moments, like the one where, you know, he helps out this boy with his wind turbine project. That was pretty nice, and yeah, it's a lot of moments where it's just Spider-Man being Spider-Man, and it's done pretty well. Of course, I have to mention Spider-Man's brand new suit because, of course, since Avengers came out and it was a huge hit, it kind of convinced other movie studios to have a lot more lighter tone when it comes to their superhero movies. Except for, you know, Warner Brothers, I guess, with Batman vs. Superman. But besides that, yeah, that's basically what the norm was now, and you can clearly tell that with Amazing Spider-Man 2. But it does kind of benefit the suit because it's definitely one of the best suits out there because it definitely shows how iconic Spider-Man is. You got the nice, big, vibrant, big eyes, and of course the more vibrant colors. And yeah, it's a much more cleaner look overall. And yeah, I understand why a lot of people think of this as their favorite suit because there's definitely a lot to love here. And of course, to go along with this brand new cool looking suit is of course the brand new spectacle that this movie has, because there's a lot of cool scenes that you can see with the Spider-Man suit. There's some fun slow motion scenes where when, you know, he was dodging all the lightning from Electro. That was pretty fun. And of course the beginning scene is pretty cool as well. They really try to make a big spectacle out of Spider-Man here, and then you can clearly tell that with the web swinging, like the beginning one where you have this, I guess, weird POV shot of, you know, him swinging around, and that was so cool. It's like phew, phew. Just the camera moving around, it's so fun. It makes me want to move this camera around just for fun. You know what, I can do that right now. Okay, I got rid of all the lights, let's do this. And how could I forget the awesome music of Hans Zimmer in this film? No, seriously, this is a future recording, I completely forgot about it. It just really emphasized the whole iconic nature of Spider-Man in this film. It really fits Spider-Man well in this. Of course, the moments can't really make up the whole movie. Of course, you definitely need to have a good story to go along with that, and sadly, this movie didn't really deliver on that part. But this is one thing I have to commend Sony for, which is something that a lot of people seem to make fun of and say how ridiculous it is. They were going to make a cinematic universe with just one superhero franchise. Think about that. Nobody would ever do that except Sony, which is kind of surprising and a pretty brave move in my opinion. And it would have been a more fun universe to speculate, arguably, because you know, it's restricted to one superhero franchise, so it would have been fun to see how people would have think could have happened to make it all come together into one big epic crossover movie like Avengers Endgame. You know, what would this universe, this Endgame be like? That would have been very interesting to see. And yeah, there was even some really weird yet fun ideas they had for movies. Like there was one where it's going to be focusing on Aunt May back in the past, where she was a secret agent. I don't think that was ever established in the comics. So yeah, that would have been really interesting to see. Yeah, sure, it's more preferable for Spider-Man to be in the actual Marvel Cinematic Universe, but still, they had some pretty good building blocks here. They were going to explore the past of Peter Parker's parents, as well as this weird, mysterious hat guy person, which was going to set up the Sinister Six, which I think was a pretty good idea. Of course, there is one question when it comes to this cinematic universe, is that would this cinematic universe be, well, good or not? Well, I don't know. I mean, I actually kind of asked Lena if he can find a dimension where this cinematic universe happened, but we have no luck yet. Any updates? Well, sorry Daniel, no updates yet. Still haven't found that dimension. Okay, yeah, we'll keep you posted when we find a universe where this cinematic universe happened and see if it's actually good or not. But anyways, that was Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. In my opinion, I kind of feel like it was a pretty good Spider-Man, and it definitely could have been the best, but I kind of feel like the Tom Holland version of Spider-Man and the Tobey Maguire version of Spider-Man do a lot more with the Spider-Man character and world to really make it be more up there compared to Andrew Garfield's version of Spider-Man. So yeah, it is a bit unfortunate, but hey, who knows? I know there is the possibility that Andrew Garfield might appear in the near future, like the really near future, but Andrew Garfield himself said otherwise. And I know a lot of people don't really believe him and saying that he's lying and saying that, you know, he is the werewolf. But you know what? I'm gonna have some fun. I'm gonna be the only person in the world to believe Andrew Garfield's words. That's right, I'm gonna do it. I know he should have said something like After Effects instead of Photoshop when it comes to that little interview. And I know he kind of stumbles upon his words a little bit, but still, I don't care. He said that we're going to be disappointed, so I am not going to be disappointed by believing his words. Tell your friends, tell your family, put it on the news. Daniel believes in Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. Put it on the Daily Bugle. Tell Jane Jonah Jameson, whichever version. Yeah. Look, I know this might turn out badly for me when the movie comes out, but I don't care. For Andrew, it is I, the Interrupter, and I demand my mask back, please. Alright, just let me finish this review and I'll give it back to you. Oh yeah, mind if you give me that blanket in exchange? Wait, what? Why? Well, let's just say I'm not done with Sony just yet. So until then guys, rock it on. Can't see, but I have a list just to write things down. You have the secrets. It's not a script, it's just a paper.